Sources: White House Official Statement, January 16, 2026. UN Security Council Resolution 2803. November 17, 2025. Reuters, Al Jazeera. Financial Times reporting January 16 to 17, 2026. Former UN Special Coordinator Nikolay Mladenov statements. Carnegie Endowment for International Peace Analysis, December 2025. If you want to stay updated on breaking international developments like this one, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. This story is unfolding right now. The announcement came just hours ago. President Donald Trump has unveiled what he calls the greatest and most prestigious board ever assembled at any time, any place. The Board of Peace for Gaza, names you recognize, powers you might not expect. A plan that could reshape the Middle East or collapse under its own contradictions. Let me tell you what just happened. Yesterday, the White House released the official roster. Trump himself as chairman, his son-in-law Jared Kushner, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, former British Prime Minister, Tony Blair, World Bank President Ajay Banga, Apollo Global Management, CEO Mark Rowan, Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan, Qatari diplomat Ali Al-Thawadi, Egyptian Intelligence Chief Hassan Rashad, UAE Minister Rima Al-Hashimi, Dutch former Deputy Prime Minister Sigrid Kaag, Israeli entrepreneur Yakir Gabe. This isn't just a committee. This is a transitional governing authority for 2.1 million people in Gaza, authorized by UN Security Council Resolution 2803, passed on November 17th with 13 votes in favor, 0 against, and abstentions from Russia and China. Pause for a moment. Think about what that means. But here's where it gets complicated. The Board of Peace emerged from a 20-point plan Trump announced in late September. A ceasefire was achieved in October after more than 2 years of war that began when Hamas attacked southern Israel on October 7, 2023, killing approximately 1,200 people. Israel's response devastated Gaza. Over 71,000 Palestinians killed, according to Gaza's health ministry. The UN and multiple countries have called Israel's actions genocide. Phase 1 brought a fragile ceasefire, hostage exchanges, partial Israeli withdrawal, humanitarian aid surges. Now Phase 2 launches today. Demilitarization, technocratic, governance, reconstruction. The Board of Peace oversees it all. If you're finding this valuable, smash that like button. It helps more people understand what's really happening. Bulgarian diplomat Nikolay Mladenov serves as High Representative for Gaza. He's the on-the-ground link between the Board of Peace and the National Committee for the Administration of Gaza, headed by Dr. Ali Shath, a former Palestinian Authority Deputy Planning Minister. Shath's committee met for the first time yesterday in Cairo. Their job is restoring basic services, rebuilding institutions, stabilizing daily life for Gazans. Major General Jasper Jeffers commands the International Stabilization Force. Their mandate is securing borders, comprehensive demilitarization, disarming militias, enabling aid delivery. Countries like Turkey, Egypt, Indonesia, and Azerbaijan were mentioned as potential contributors, though Azerbaijan recently backed out. U.S. officials claim they have enough commitments now, but haven't announced which countries are participating. Here's the tension nobody's talking about openly. The resolution envisions a possible pathway to Palestinian statehood, but only after advances in reconstruction and Palestinian Authority reforms. No timeline, no guarantee. Just conditional language. After those steps, the resolution says, conditions may finally be in place for a credible pathway to Palestinian self-determination and statehood. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu opposes Palestinian statehood. He opposes Gaza being governed by the Palestinian Authority. Yet the Board of Peace includes officials from Qatar and Turkey, two of Israel's harshest critics regarding the war. Trump invited them specifically because he believes they can pressure Hamas into compliance. Make sure you're subscribed because this situation could change dramatically in the coming days. Think about the players assembled here. Tony Blair, who led Britain into the Iraq War alongside George W. Bush in the so-called War on Terror, widely condemned for that decision. Now he's overseeing post-war reconstruction in Gaza. Jared Kushner, who once suggested Palestinians are incapable of self-governance. Mark Rowan, a Wall Street financier managing billions. Ajay Banga, with family ties to the Indian military establishment. These are the people making decisions about Gaza's future. The Carnegie Endowment for International Peace published an analysis last month questioning the legal framework. They argue Resolution 2803 legitimizes indefinite Israeli control over Gaza in partnership with the United States. They point out that Israeli forces will only withdraw based on benchmarks and conditions that Israel maintains final say over, meaning Israel retains overarching security control. Let me read you something directly from their report. The Security Council's endorsement stands in stark contrast to the series of binding legal decisions decided by the International Court of Justice between 2024 and 2025. Those ICJ rulings determined Israel's actions create a plausible risk of genocide in Gaza, that Israeli measures against Palestinians violate prohibitions against racial segregation and apartheid, that Israel's continued presence in occupied Palestinian territory is illegal and forces must be withdrawn immediately. So you have international law saying one thing, the Security Council authorizing something different. That's not a small contradiction. If you haven't liked this video yet, do it now. These are the details mainstream coverage often glosses over. Hamas hasn't agreed to disarm. That's a core requirement of Phase 2. Palestinian political factions haven't responded to the Board of Peace composition. On the ground in Gaza yesterday, Israeli strikes killed a 10-year-old girl, a 16-year-old boy, and an elderly woman. The ceasefire is fragile at best. The Health Ministry reported 6 people wounded by IDF gunfire in the past 24 hours. A 27-day-old baby girl named Asha Alaga died from cold exposure in Khan Yunis, the 8th child to die from cold this winter in Gaza. The plan calls for a reconstruction estimated at $70 billion by the UN. Little funding has been pledged. The World Bank will manage an international Gaza reconstruction fund, but donor commitments remain vague. The Board of Peace is supposed to mobilize capital, attract investment, coordinate regional relations. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff announced Phase 2 on social media Tuesday. He wrote, on behalf of President Trump, "We are announcing the launch of Phase 2 of the President's 20-point plan to end the Gaza conflict, moving from ceasefire to demilitarization, technocratic governance, and reconstruction." Trump riposted it, declaring himself chairman of the Board of Peace and backing Dr. Schaaf's technocratic government. Trump wrote that he's established a comprehensive demilitarization agreement with Hamas, but Hamas hasn't confirmed that. There's no public agreement. No verification mechanism announced? Just Trump's assertion? Subscribe if you want the full picture, not just the headlines they want you to see. Russia and China abstained from the Security Council vote for specific reasons. Russian Ambassador Vasily Nebenzia said the Council was giving its blessing to a U.S. initiative based on Washington's promises, giving complete control over Gaza to the Board of Peace and the ISF, the modalities of which we know nothing about. Russia then circulated its own counter-proposal draft, claiming to offer a balanced approach. It went nowhere. Algeria's UN ambassador acknowledged Trump's peace efforts but stressed genuine peace in the Middle East cannot be achieved without justice for the Palestinian people who have waited for decades for establishment of their independent state. Multiple Arab nations pushed during negotiations to strengthen language about Palestinian self-determination. The final resolution softened significantly from earlier drafts. Some analysts see this as the only available mechanism to end suffering and stabilize Gaza, given that the United States is the only stakeholder with sufficient influence over Israel. Others argue it constitutes international trusteeship over Gaza under indirect U.S. leadership, legally and politically contentious. The Board of Peace operates outside direct UN control. It's a non-UN body with international legal standing conferred by its Security Council authorization. Trump chairs it. U.S. officials dominate the executive board. But UN agencies will continue leading humanitarian operations and civilian protection because they're the only ones with sustained operational capacity at scale in Gaza. Here's what happens next. The National Committee for the Administration of Gaza begins restoring services, water, electricity, healthcare, education, waste management, everything destroyed in 2 years of war. The International Stabilization Force deploys, though exact timing and composition remain unclear. The Board of Peace coordinates reconstruction funding and oversees governance capacity building. If this analysis is helping you understand the complexity, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. Dr. Ali Shath told Egyptian media after yesterday's Cairo meeting that the Palestinian people were looking forward to this committee, its establishment, and its work to rescue them. He pledged to work quickly to improve living conditions. But he governs under the oversight of a Trump-led board with no electoral mandate from Gazans themselves. No Palestinian Authority representation. No timeline for transferring authority. Turkish President Erdogan received an invitation to become a founding member of the Board of Peace. So did Argentina's President Javier Milei. The structure keeps expanding. More members will be announced in coming weeks, according to the White House. Roles and responsibilities still being defined. Start dates unclear. Meanwhile, Israeli forces maintain positions throughout Gaza. They haven't fully withdrawn. The ceasefire agreement from October required phased Israeli pullback, but implementation has been partial and sporadic clashes continue. Palestinians returning to what's left of their homes find devastation beyond comprehension. Entire neighborhoods erased. Infrastructure obliterated. The human cost is staggering. 71,000 Palestinians killed since October 2023, tens of thousands more injured. Hundreds of thousands displaced multiple times, families separated, children orphaned, a generation traumatized. And now an international board, led by the American president, will determine their immediate future. Make sure to like this video so others can find this detailed breakdown. Trump described this as historic, as one of the biggest approvals in the history of the United Nations that will lead to further peace all over the world. U.S. Ambassador Mike Waltz called it a moment of true historic proportion that represents another significant step towards a stable Gaza that will be able to prosper and an environment that will allow Israel to live in security. But Palestinian voices express skepticism mixed with cautious hope. They fear decisions imposed from outside fail to address justice, freedom, and lived realities in Gaza. They question whether a board dominated by Western and allied powers can deliver genuine self-determination. They note the absence of mechanisms to hold the board accountable to Gazans themselves. The International Stabilization Force is described as an enforcement force, not peacekeeping. That's unprecedented in the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, according to diplomatic analysts. Enforcement means active military operations, disarming factions, securing territory, potentially engaging armed groups. That's fundamentally different from monitoring a peace agreement. Who exactly will deploy troops, under what rules of engagement? With what legal protections? These details remain undisclosed. Countries considering participation want guarantees they won't become complicit in ongoing violations. They want clear mandates, exit strategies, protection from legal liability. Subscribe, like, and comment below with your thoughts on this historic development. The plan's success depends on variables largely outside the Board of Peace's control. Will Hamas disarm? Will Israel fully withdraw? Will reconstruction funding materialize? Will regional powers cooperate or compete? Will Gazans accept governance by unelected technocrats supervised by foreign powers? Will the Palestinian Authority reform sufficiently to eventually take over? Will conditions ever be met for a pathway to statehood? Every single one of those questions carries enormous uncertainty. Any one of them failing could unravel the entire framework. Yet this is the structure the international community just authorized. The most comprehensive attempt at resolving Gaza's status since the war began. The highest profile board ever assembled for this purpose. Former UN envoy Nikolay Mladenov has experience in Middle East diplomacy. He knows the complexities, the competing interests, the deep historical grievances. But he reports to Trump. The Board of Peace answers to Trump. This is fundamentally an American-led initiative with international window dressing. That's not necessarily criticism. Its description: what leverage does the Board of Peace actually have? It controls access to reconstruction funds, assuming donors commit them. It coordinates with the International Stabilization Force, assuming it deploys effectively. It oversees Dr. Schath's technocratic committee, assuming Israel permits it to function. Everything is conditional. Everything depends on cooperation from parties with conflicting interests. If you're still watching, leave a comment. Tell me what you think this means for Gaza's future. Consider the timeline. The ceasefire began in October. 3 months of Phase 1. Now Phase 2 launches with no specified end date, though the Board of Peace mandate runs through December 2027. That's nearly 2 more years of this transitional arrangement at minimum. 2 years during which Gazans live under international administration. 2 years during which reconstruction either happens or doesn't. 2 years during which the question of Palestinian statehood remains unresolved. Critics call this kicking the can down the road. Supporters call it pragmatic gradualism. The truth is probably somewhere in between. Nobody has a better plan that could actually be implemented given current political realities. The Trump administration managed to broker a ceasefire when others couldn't. They convinced Israel and Hamas to stop fighting, at least temporarily. That's not nothing. But converting a ceasefire into lasting peace requires addressing root causes: occupation, settlement, expansion, blockades, political representation, economic opportunity, justice for past crimes. None of those issues have clear pathways under this plan. The language is deliberately vague. Conditions may be in place. Possible future path, credible pathway, all carefully hedged. The Board of Peace includes Arya Lightstone and Josh Grinbaum as senior advisors leading day-to-day strategy and operations. Lightstone previously served as Chief of Staff to the U.S. Ambassador to Israel under Trump's first term. He was deeply involved in the Abraham Accords. He brings connections and experience. He also brings a perspective strongly aligned with Israeli security concerns. That's the pattern throughout the board. People with influence, people with resources, people with regional relationships, but overwhelmingly people whose primary loyalty is to American or Allied interests, not Palestinian rights. Dr. Schath may be Palestinian, Mladenov may be neutral, but they operate within a framework designed in Washington. Don't forget to subscribe. This story will develop rapidly in the coming weeks. Gaza executive board members include officials from Turkey, Qatar, Egypt, UAE, Netherlands, and Israel. That geographic diversity matters. Those countries have different stakes in Gaza's future. Turkey wants regional influence. Qatar wants to maintain its mediation role. Egypt wants border security. UAE wants economic opportunities. Netherlands wants humanitarian standards upheld. Israel wants security guarantees and Hamas eliminated. Can one board reconcile those competing interests? That's the fundamental question. The structure assumes cooperation. It assumes shared goals. It assumes everyone prioritizes Gaza's reconstruction over their own strategic objectives. That's optimistic at best, naive at worst. Yesterday in Gaza, life continued amid ruins. People search for food, water, shelter, safety, dignity, hope. The Board of Peace deliberates in Washington, Cairo, Jerusalem, Ankara, Doha. Mladenov coordinates from his office. Schath meets with his committee. Jeffers prepares his security force. But for ordinary Gazans, the reality is cold nights without heating, children without schools, hospitals without supplies, homes without roofs. The 20-point plan promises reconstruction. It promises stability. It promises a pathway to prosperity. Those are words on paper. Translating them into concrete improvements in people's lives is the challenge. Building housing, restoring electricity grids, rebuilding hospitals, reopening schools, creating jobs, establishing functioning governance. Reconstruction estimates of $70 billion exceed the entire economies of many countries. That's Marshall Plan level funding relative to Gaza's size. Where does that money come from? Who controls it? How is it distributed? What accountability mechanisms exist? The plan says the World Bank manages it. But who commits the initial funding? Saudi Arabia? Europe? United States? Make sure you like this video and share it with anyone who needs to understand what's really happening. None of those questions have public answers yet. The Board of Peace is supposed to mobilize capital. Mark Rowan brings Wall Street expertise. Ajay Banga brings development finance experience. But mobilizing $70 billion for Gaza reconstruction, given current geopolitical tensions and competing global crises, is enormously difficult. Donors want assurances their money won't be diverted. They want proof of effective governance. They want stability guarantees. That creates a chicken and egg problem. You need funding for reconstruction. But you need reconstruction to create stability, and you need stability to attract funding. Breaking that cycle requires someone taking risk up front. The Board of Peace hopes international coordination can spread that risk. Multiple donors, multiple implementers, multiple oversight mechanisms. But every additional party adds complexity. Every additional oversight mechanism slows implementation. Gaza needs help now. People are suffering now. Children are dying from cold exposure now. A 16-year-old boy was killed by gunfire yesterday. Administrative structures and coordination mechanisms take time to establish while urgent needs go unmet. The tension between immediate humanitarian crisis and long-term institutional development is real. Dr. Schath's committee must address both simultaneously. Provide emergency services while building durable systems. Respond to today's needs while planning for tomorrow's governance. All under international oversight. All while Israeli forces maintain security control. All while Hamas retains weapons and influence. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss updates as this develops. Speaking of Hamas, their position remains unclear. They said they're ready to hand over Gaza's administration to a Palestinian committee. Turkish Foreign Minister Fidan relayed that message. But ready to hand over administration is different from ready to disarm. Hamas views armed resistance as legitimate. They've fought multiple wars with Israel. Their military capabilities are core to their identity and bargaining power. The plan requires comprehensive demilitarization, Hamas giving up weapons, other armed factions disarming, the International Stabilization Force overseeing that process. But what incentive does Hamas have to disarm before Israeli withdrawal is complete, before political arrangements are settled, before they know what comes next? This is where the plan faces its most fundamental challenge. Israel won't fully withdraw until Gaza is demilitarized and Hamas is neutralized. Hamas won't disarm until Israel withdraws and political settlements are guaranteed. Classic security dilemma. Each side's security depends on the other's insecurity. Breaking that requires trust or coercion or both. Trump's approach seems to rely on both. Trust building through the Board of Peace and technocratic governance. Coercion through Israeli military presence and international pressure on Hamas. Whether that combination works depends on execution and circumstances beyond anyone's control. Former British Prime Minister Tony Blair brings decades of Middle East experience post-office. After leaving government, he served as envoy for the Quartet on the Middle East, representing the UN, EU, Russia, and United States in Israeli-Palestinian negotiations. He knows the players, he knows the history, he also knows the frustrations of failed peace processes, but Blair is controversial. His role in the Iraq War remains deeply contentious. Many Arabs view him as complicit in Western imperialism in the Middle East. His inclusion on the Board of Peace generates immediate skepticism from constituencies who see him as representing Western interests, not Palestinian rights. That perception matters even if unfair. Legitimacy depends partly on perception. If you've made it this far, you clearly care about understanding the full story. Subscribe and hit that bell. The structure creates multiple layers. Board of Peace Executive Committee, Gaza Executive Board, National Committee for the Administration of Gaza, Office of the High Representative, International Stabilization Force Command, UN Humanitarian Operations. Each layer has members, mandates, reporting lines, coordination requirements. That's complex governance for an emergency situation. Complexity can enable thoroughness and accountability, or it can enable paralysis and buck passing. Which outcome occurs depends on leadership, resources, and political will. Mladinov's role as High Representative is crucial. He's the linkage point between all these structures. If he succeeds in coordination, the system might function. If coordination fails, the layers become obstacles. What about ordinary Gazans' voices in all this? Where's their representation? Dr. Schath's committee is technocratic, not elected. The Board of Peace is appointed by Trump. The Gaza Executive Board includes foreign officials. No mechanism exists for Gazans to hold these bodies accountable through democratic processes. That's acknowledged as a legitimacy challenge by analysts. The counterargument is that emergency circumstances require technocratic efficiency, not democratic deliberation. Elections can come later once stability is restored and institutions are rebuilt. That's the rationale. Whether Gazans accept that rationale depends on whether they see tangible improvements in their lives and whether they believe this transitional arrangement truly is temporary. History is full of temporary arrangements that became permanent. Gazans have lived under various forms of external control for generations. They have reasonable skepticism about promises of future self-determination. Words need to become actions. Reconstruction needs to happen. Services need to improve. Freedom of movement needs to expand. Political horizons need to open. Comment below and let me know if you think this plan can actually work. The International Stabilization Force faces particular scrutiny. Enforcement mandate. Unified command acceptable to the Board of Peace. Troops from multiple countries with different doctrines, languages, capabilities, and political constraints. That's challenging under the best circumstances. In Gaza, it's extraordinarily difficult. Military forces need clear rules of engagement. What happens if they encounter armed resistance? Are they authorized to use force? Under what circumstances? Against whom? What if Hamas or other factions refuse to disarm peacefully? Does the ISF conduct forcible disarmament operations? Those are combat operations, not stabilization. Countries contributing troops want answers to those questions before deployment. They want legal protections, they want political backing, they want exit strategies. The plan doesn't publicly address those concerns yet. U.S. officials say details will be released in coming weeks. But countries make deployment decisions now based on available information, which remains limited. Major General Jasper Jeffers commands the ISF. His experience and reputation matter. His ability to build a coalition force from diverse contributors matters. His relationship with Israeli military counterparts matters. His credibility with Palestinian communities matters. One person carrying enormous responsibility for security outcomes that determine whether the entire plan succeeds or fails. Subscribe now because I'll be tracking every development in this story. The $70 billion reconstruction estimate includes infrastructure, housing, industrial zones, public facilities, everything destroyed in 2 years of war. But it also includes building new economic systems. The plan envisions Gaza as potentially prosperous, trade, industry, employment, self-sustaining economy. That requires not just rebuilding what was there, but creating something better. That's ambitious. Gaza had high unemployment and poverty even before the war. Israeli blockade restrictions limited economic activity. Reconstruction could lift those limitations if political arrangements change. Open borders for trade. Access to international markets, investment in productive sectors. That's transformative potential. But it requires cooperation from Israel, Egypt, and international community. Economic development creates stakes in peace. If Gazans have jobs, businesses, opportunities, they have reasons to maintain stability. If reconstruction fails and Gaza remains impoverished and isolated, grievances persist and future conflict becomes likely. The Board of Peace understands this. Economic component is central to the plan, but economics depend on politics. Trade depends on borders being open. Investment depends on security. Jobs depend on functioning governance. Everything connects. That's why the plan attempts comprehensive approach. Address security, governance, economics, and politics simultaneously. Difficult but potentially necessary. What role does the Palestinian Authority play eventually? The plan suggests PA could take over after reforms and reconstruction milestones. But PA currently governs parts of West Bank, not Gaza. Hamas expelled PA from Gaza in 2007. Deep divisions exist between Fatah and Hamas. Reconciliation efforts have repeatedly failed. Can this plan succeed where previous reconciliation attempts failed? Maybe external pressure and changed circumstances create new dynamics. Maybe PA reforms make it more acceptable to Gazans. Maybe Hamas's position weakens sufficiently that PA return becomes viable. Those are significant maybes. Drop a like if this deep dive is valuable to you. Netanyahu's opposition to PA governance in Gaza creates another obstacle. He said publicly he won't accept PA administration, yet the plan envisions PA eventual return. That contradiction hasn't been resolved. It's papered over with vague timeline language, but eventually it must be addressed. Either Netanyahu's position changes or the plan's political component fails. Regional dynamics matter too. Saudi Arabia, UAE, Egypt, Jordan, Qatar, Turkey all have interests in Gaza's future. Saudi Arabia wants normalization with Israel conditional on Palestinian progress. The UAE already normalized but wants regional stability. Egypt wants secure border and Palestinian political settlement. Jordan fears Palestinian displacement. Qatar wants influence through humanitarian and mediation roles. Turkey wants regional leadership. The Board of Peace brings together some of these actors, but can they actually coordinate effectively given competing interests? That's uncertain. Each capital has its own priorities. Each government faces domestic political constraints. Each leader calculates costs and benefits of cooperation versus competition. International politics is messy. National interests diverge. Rhetoric doesn't match action. Commitments shift. The Board of Peace operates in that environment. Success requires navigating all those complexities while delivering tangible results for Gazans. That's extraordinarily difficult. Stay subscribed for continued coverage as events unfold. Some observers see this as historic opportunity. First comprehensive framework since war began. International backing through Security Council. High-level leadership. Substantial funding potential. Coordination mechanisms. If everything aligns, Gaza could be transformed. That's the optimistic scenario. Pessimistic scenario sees contradictions tearing the plan apart. Hamas refuses to disarm. Israel maintains control. Funding doesn't materialize. Board of Peace becomes talk shop. Technocratic committee lacks authority. Gazans reject foreign-imposed governance. Ceasefire collapses. Fighting resumes. 2 years from now, nothing fundamental has changed except more destruction and more suffering. Most likely scenario is somewhere between. Partial progress, some reconstruction. Some governance improvements, some compromises, some setbacks. Muddling through rather than transformation or collapse. That's how most complex political processes work. Incremental changes, partial successes, ongoing negotiations, contested outcomes. But for Gazans living through this, muddling through means continued hardship, uncertainty, and delay in achieving basic rights and dignity. That's the human cost of political complexity. Real people suffering while institutions coordinate and negotiate and deliberate. The next few weeks are critical. ISF deployment or lack thereof. Reconstruction funding announcements or absence. Hamas statements on disarmament. Israeli military movements. Board of Peace operational details. Dr. Schath's committee accomplishments or struggles. Mladenov's effectiveness as High Representative. Each development provides information about whether this plan has real potential or is already faltering. Subscribe, like, and share this video with anyone who needs to understand what's happening in Gaza right now. Watch this space. Watch Gaza. Watch the Board of Peace. Watch the International Stabilization Force. Watch reconstruction funding. Watch Palestinian responses. Watch Israeli actions. Watch regional diplomacy. This story is just beginning. The announcement happened yesterday. Implementation begins now. Outcomes remain undetermined. What we know is that 2 million people in Gaza are waiting. Waiting for safety, waiting for services, waiting for reconstruction, waiting for dignity. Waiting for political horizons? Waiting for peace. The Board of Peace just announced carries responsibility for whether that waiting produces results or disappointment. History will judge this initiative by its outcomes, not its rhetoric. 71,000 Palestinians dead. Entire territory devastated, millions of lives disrupted. Generations traumatized. Those are the stakes. Those are the consequences of failure. Those are the reasons why this matters beyond politics and beyond headlines. If you found this analysis comprehensive and valuable, hit that subscribe button, smash the like, turn on notifications, and leave a comment with your perspective. Share this video so others can understand the full complexity of what was just announced. The Board of Peace for Gaza, historic opportunity or tragic disappointment, time will tell. Thank you for watching. Stay informed, stay engaged, stay human.